He was the kind of man you never forget. Sam Collins didn't walk into a room. He lit it up. At just 28 years old, he had already become the heart and soul of Ocean Dome Marine Park. Not because he demanded attention, but because he earned respect. He wasn't in it for the fame or the spotlight. Sam simply loved the ocean, loved the animals, and above all, he loved Nakoa. Born in a quiet coastal town, Sam grew up with salt in his veins. His earliest memories were of watching whales breach the waterline during family beach trips, his small hands clapping wildly, eyes wide with wonder. By the age of 10, while most kids were dreaming of becoming astronauts or superheroes, Sam had made up his mind. He was going to work with orcas. He devoured every book on marine life he could find. He volunteered at local aquariums, cleaned tanks, attended lectures meant for adults, and shadowed anyone willing to teach him. His passion wasn't loud. It was relentless. By the time he turned 22, Sam had landed an internship at Ocean Dome, a dream come true. The park was one of the largest marine entertainment complexes in the country, known for its choreographed shows, massive stadium and star attraction, Nakoa, the male orca. At first, Sam wasn't allowed anywhere near the whales. He swept floors, prepped food, cleaned wetsuits, but he never complained. He showed up early, stayed late, and watched every single training session with a quiet, focused intensity. Trainers began to notice, and eventually he earned their trust. Within a year, Sam was offered a full-time position as a junior trainer, and that's when he met Nakoa. The first meeting wasn't magical. It was tense. Nakoa was large, intimidating, unpredictable. But Sam didn't flinch. He watched, he waited, and slowly, day by day, he built a relationship most trainers had tried and failed to form. He didn't use commands, he used connection. He spoke softly, moved gently, and treated Nakoa not like a prop in a performance, but like the intelligent, emotional being he was. Some joked that Sam was the Orca whisperer, but those who worked closely with him knew this wasn't a joke, it was real. Something rare was forming between man and animal. Over time, that bond grew stronger. Sam and Nakoa began performing together during public shows. Perfectly timed routines that dazzled crowds. Children cheered as Sam dove off Nakoa's back, looped through the water beside him, and stood atop his massive head like a living statue. To spectators, it looked like trust, and in many ways it was. But it was also dangerous. Behind the scenes, some senior staff had concerns. Nakoa had a record, one that would soon become impossible to ignore. But to Sam, those were just stories. He believed in Nakoa, believed that love, patience, and consistency could overcome fear. He often said, "You don't force trust with a creature like this. You earn it every day, every swim, every breath." Sam's family worried. His mother, in particular, feared the risk. But whenever she voiced her concern, Sam would smile and say, "He knows me, Mom. He'd never hurt me." To Sam, orca training wasn't a job. It was his calling. And to Nakoa, Sam wasn't just a trainer. He was the only human who ever looked at him and saw more than a showpiece. They were partners. They were friends. And for a while it seemed that bond was unbreakable. But behind every beautiful performance, behind every smiling face, was a truth waiting to surface. And on one scorching August afternoon, it finally did. Nakoa was never an ordinary orca. He was massive, even by orca standards, measuring over 22 feet long and weighing more than 10,000 pounds. His dorsal fin, tall and bent slightly at the tip, was the most recognizable silhouette at Ocean Dome. Children pointed at it with glee. Trainers spoke of it with caution, because behind the curtain of applause and flashing cameras, Nakoa had a past. He was captured as a calf off the coast of Iceland, torn from his pod at just 3 years old. Marine records showed that during the capture, Nakoa's mother swam alongside the boats for hours, refusing to leave her baby. She cried, breached, slapped her tail, and then disappeared under the waves. Nakoa never saw her again. That kind of trauma doesn't go away, and those who work with captive orcas know a scar beneath the surface isn't always visible until it cracks open. Nakoa was shipped across continents, from one marine park to another. He arrived at Ocean Dome already showing signs of distress, refusing food, grinding his teeth against tank walls, ramming gates. But he was powerful, impressive, and marketable. Management had plans for him. Within a year, Nakoa became the centerpiece of the Ocean Dome brand. He was renamed, rebranded, and retrained. The aggression didn't vanish, it was redirected. Trainers learned to work around his moods. Feeding times were carefully timed. Sessions were limited. But every so often, he snapped. There were whispers among the staff. A rookie trainer pushed too hard during a session. Nakoa slapped him with his tail, shattering the man's wrist. A senior handler was cornered against the tank wall, not injured, but shaken. Then there was the drowning. It never made the news. An assistant diver, 19 years old, slipped into the water for routine cleaning. According to internal reports, Nakoa approached silently, pinned the diver against the floor of the tank for nearly 30 seconds, then released him. The diver surfaced gasping, disoriented. He died in the hospital 2 hours later. Cause of death: cardiac arrest due to water inhalation. Officially, the incident was labeled a medical emergency unrelated to the Orca. Unofficially, it was a warning. Trainers began documenting Nakoa's episodes: sudden agitation, refusal to perform, strange vocalizations that didn't match any behavior cues. The logs existed. They were detailed, but they never left the park. Ocean Dome had a reputation to protect. The park brought in millions each year from shows, merchandise, and tourism, and Nakoa was the star. Replacing him wasn't an option. Retiring him meant millions lost. So they kept him on a strict regimen: calculated meals, rehearsed routines, and only the most trusted trainers. That's where Sam came in. He was new, enthusiastic, and perhaps most importantly, unafraid. Sam didn't see what others did. Where they saw danger, he saw possibility. He believed Nakoa's aggression wasn't cruelty, it was communication. Misunderstood behavior. He once told a colleague, "He's trying to speak and no one's listening." Maybe he was right, but the truth remained. Nakoa was unpredictable, and that unpredictability was growing. In the months leading up to the final show, staff noticed a change. Nakoa was more restless, often circling his tank for hours. He refused cues during rehearsals. During one show, he broke formation, splashing the audience violently and ignoring commands. Sam calmed him down, with a whisper, with presence. The crowd never knew. But trainers did. Some began to file formal complaints. A few even requested reassignment. Emails between supervisors show rising concern. Subject lines like behavioral escalation and urgent session notes. Nakoa. One message even included the line, "We are one incident away from disaster." But no action was taken. The shows continued, the crowds kept coming, and Sam kept believing. Because sometimes when you love something deeply, you can't see it clearly. And in this case, the danger wasn't just in the water, it was already circling. It was August 14th, a Saturday. A heat wave had swept across the state, and the Ocean Dome parking lot was packed before noon. Families with strollers, tourists with cameras, children wearing plastic orca hats, all gathered for one thing: the 2 p.m. Nakoa show. The stadium filled quickly, nearly 800 people seated under the curved glass dome. The air smelled of popcorn, sea mist, and sunscreen. The announcer's voice echoed through the space: "Get ready for a spectacular performance with our very own Nakoa and the incredible Sam Collins." Backstage, Sam zipped up his wetsuit with practiced calm. He had done this routine dozens of times. Today was no different, or so it seemed. A few trainers noted that Nakoa had been acting off that morning. He'd refused a target ball, and during warm-ups, he ignored 2 command cues from another handler. One supervisor advised skipping the water entry portion of the routine. Sam disagreed. "He just needs me out there," he said quietly. "We'll be fine." 2:12 p.m. The music started. Sam stepped out onto the platform to applause. He smiled, waved, and gave Nakoa the hand signal to begin. The massive black and white orca emerged from the water in a perfect vertical leap, spraying the front row. Cheers erupted. For the first few minutes, everything went exactly as planned. Sam dove into the pool. Nakoa circled him, then lifted him into the air with his rostrum. They performed a synchronized spiral, a crowd favorite. From above, it looked like art. From beneath the surface, something was shifting. Trainers on the side platform noticed it first. Nakoa's swim pattern had changed. His tail flicks became erratic. He wasn't responding cleanly to Sam's cues. Sam gave the next signal, a deep dive followed by a platform lift. Nakoa submerged. Then he didn't come up. There was a pause, just a few seconds, but long enough to feel unnatural. Then chaos. Without warning, Nakoa lunged from beneath Sam, striking him in the side. The collision was so fast that most of the audience didn't understand what had happened. But trainers did. Sam was dragged underwater. Gasps rippled through the stadium. Some people thought it was part of the show. Others began to scream. A mother in the third row covered her child's eyes. For 18 seconds, nothing broke the surface. Then, a flash of color. Nakoa surfaced with Sam in his mouth, his body limp. Trainers threw emergency distraction buoys into the pool. Nothing worked. Sam was dragged under again, this time longer. The head trainer signaled for the emergency gate. A loud alarm blared through the stadium as staff tried to isolate Nakoa into a holding tank. But he refused to separate. He swam in tight circles, dragging Sam with him. Underwater cameras caught the unthinkable. Nakoa holding Sam by the torso, then releasing him, only to strike him again with the side of his head. Above the water, panic erupted. Audience members scrambled for exits. Some screamed for help. Others froze in disbelief. A child began to cry uncontrollably. A teenage girl vomited. Security tried to usher people out while paramedics pushed their way to the edge of the pool. At 2:21 p.m., nearly 9 minutes after the attack began, Nakoa finally released Sam's body near the platform. Lifeguards pulled him out. His face was pale. His chest was still. CPR was attempted immediately. There were no vital signs. He was pronounced dead at 2:36 p.m. The official report would later state that Sam died from blunt force trauma to the chest and multiple drowning-related injuries. The full autopsy revealed broken ribs, a collapsed lung, and extensive internal bleeding. But what the report didn't include was the sound. The stadium's audio recordings, later leaked, captured the moment of impact. The gasps, the frantic shouts of, "Get him out!" and the final, desperate cries from trainers who had worked alongside him for years. And in the background, you could hear Nakoa's haunting calls echoing through the tank. Some say it sounded like grief. Others believe it was rage. Whatever it was, one thing was certain. It was the end. The final show. The moment when belief shattered into reality. And in front of 800 stunned witnesses, the illusion of control, of safety, of trust, vanished in an instant. Forever. The day after Sam's death, Ocean Dome Marine Park did something that shocked no one and outraged everyone who knew the truth. They released a carefully worded statement. It read, "Ocean Dome is deeply saddened by the tragic loss of one of our most beloved trainers. Our thoughts and prayers are with Sam Collins' family. We are conducting a full internal investigation and cooperating with relevant authorities." There was no mention of Nakoa, no mention of past incidents, no warning signs, no accountability, just a photo of Sam smiling in his wetsuit and a single line about his passion for marine life. The park remained closed for just 48 hours. Then the gates reopened. Gift shops sold plush orca toys. Show posters still featured Nakoa's towering leap. Only one thing was missing: Sam. But inside those walls, something darker was happening. Internal emails, later exposed by whistleblowers, revealed a frantic scramble to control the narrative. Executives instructed staff not to speak to media. Trainers were told to sign non-disclosure agreements. Surveillance footage from the incident was flagged restricted access. Security logs were quietly edited. In one message, a senior manager wrote, "We cannot let this define us. Damage control must be the priority." Damage control. Not truth, not justice, just optics. Several trainers quit within the week. One of them, who had worked at Ocean Dome for over 10 years, later told reporters, "That pool was a ticking time bomb. We all knew. And Sam didn't die because of an orca. He died because no one wanted to listen." The park's leadership leaned on a familiar tactic: silence. They blamed unexpected animal behavior, a rare and tragic event. They emphasized Sam's bravery, but never acknowledged the warnings. Not once did they publicly admit that Nakoa had a record of aggression. Not once did they reveal that just 2 months earlier, an internal safety review had recommended reassigning Nakoa to a non-performance role. That recommendation was ignored. Why? Because Nakoa was the brand. He had earned Ocean Dome millions in sponsorships, tourism, and merchandise. His image was plastered on brochures, mugs, and billboards. Retiring him meant losing the star attraction, the heartbeat of their entire marketing campaign. And now he was a killer. But the public didn't know that, not yet. Instead, Ocean Dome fast-tracked a memorial service, a closed event with select staff, pre-approved speeches, and no media allowed. Sam's family was invited. They declined. Privately, they were devastated. Publicly, they were silent. But behind closed doors, they began asking questions, starting with one simple demand: what really happened to our son? The answers didn't come easily. Requests for full footage of the incident were delayed. Autopsy records were incomplete. Lawyers were sent to handle communications. A former trainer told Sam's sister, "They're hoping you'll grieve quietly and go away." That's what they count on. But she didn't go away, neither did the questions. And soon the cracks in Ocean Dome's version of the story began to widen. Leaked documents revealed a disturbing pattern: nearly a dozen incidents involving Nakoa over the past 5 years. Injuries, non-compliance, signs of distress, all logged, all buried. Trainers had submitted safety reports. Behaviorists had flagged concerns. But every report ended up in the same place, a folder labeled "Internal Eyes Only." Even more damning was a memo from just 3 weeks before Sam's death. It read, "Risk of escalation with Nakoa during high-stress environments increasing. Strongly recommend reducing direct contact with staff. Consider limited viewing or off-site transfer." No action was taken. In fact, Sam was encouraged to continue performing, reassured by managers that everything is under control. He trusted them. They gave him a death sentence. Meanwhile, Ocean Dome quietly hired a PR firm to manage fallout. Online reviews that mentioned the incident began disappearing. Social media posts with the hashtag number signed Justice for Sam were mysteriously shadow banned. Independent journalists who requested interviews with staff were denied access. One local reporter claimed she was followed after speaking to a former trainer off record. Something bigger was at play. This wasn't just corporate crisis management. This was suppression. And at the center of it, a grieving family, a lost trainer, and a silent orca who now floated listlessly in a tank built for applause, not healing. What the world didn't see was the aftermath behind the curtain. Nakoa refusing to eat, floating for hours without moving, letting out low, mournful sounds in the dead of night. Trainers said he became almost catatonic. One described it as like he was waiting for Sam to come back. But Sam wasn't coming back. The bond that once defined them both had been shattered, not by the Orca, not entirely, but by an industry that puts profit over safety, appearances over truth, entertainment over life. And so the cover-up deepened. But the truth, as it always does, began to leak through the cracks, not just because of outrage, but because of love. Because people who knew Sam, who worked beside him, who saw what really happened, refused to stay silent. And what they revealed would shake the marine park industry to its core. What happened to Sam Collins should have ended at Ocean Dome. But it didn't, because while the park's executives tried to bury the truth beneath statements, contracts, and silence, the story took on a life of its own. It leaked into forums, crept into Reddit threads, landed in the inboxes of independent journalists, animal welfare groups, and eventually the world. A video surfaced, grainy, filmed by a panicked audience member during the final show. It didn't capture everything, but it showed enough. A glimpse of Nakoa pulling Sam under, the screaming, the chaos, the confusion, the moment the crowd realized something was horribly, irreversibly wrong. It went viral overnight. By morning, the footage had over 10 million views. News outlets from every continent were suddenly asking the same question. How did this happen? Ocean Dome refused to comment, but others didn't. Former trainers stepped forward, anonymously at first. They began sharing documents, behavior logs, emails, internal safety warnings. Then came the interviews. One by one, the people who had spent years behind the glass began telling the public what they were never allowed to say. What they revealed was horrifying. One trainer shared that Nakoa had attempted to breach barriers more than once, that he showed signs of chronic stress, teeth wear from chewing metal grates, peeled skin from chemical exposure, collapsed dorsal fin, all signs of physical and psychological trauma. Another revealed that the staff had nicknamed him the ticking clock, because everyone was waiting for the moment he'd break. Sam just happened to be there when it finally happened. Animal welfare organizations seized the moment. The footage, the testimony, the reports, it all became part of a massive campaign. End captivity now. Protests broke out in front of Ocean Dome, then at other parks, then at government buildings. What began as a local tragedy ignited a global reckoning. People started asking the hard questions. Why are these animals still in tanks the size of swimming pools? Why are trainers working in direct contact with 10,000-pound predators? Why are warning signs ignored in favor of profit? Ocean Dome's response was telling. They quietly cancelled all orca shows indefinitely. Nakoa was moved to an off-exhibit holding pool, out of public view. Visitors could no longer see him. No updates were given. No official statement was made. For weeks, it was like he never existed. But Nakoa's absence spoke volumes, and the world kept speaking back. Petitions demanding change gathered millions of signatures. Celebrities and politicians weighed in. The Collins family, once silent, stepped into the spotlight. In a heartbreaking televised interview, Sam's father, a retired firefighter, said, "My son spent his life believing he could form a bond strong enough to overcome pain, but no bond is stronger than what captivity breaks down day after day. My son didn't die in a freak accident. He died in a system designed to fail him." Those words hit like thunder. Sam became more than a name. He became a symbol of passion, of vulnerability, of how even the best intentions can be crushed by a machine that sees animals as assets and humans as replaceable. More stories followed. Old cases were reopened. Incidents long buried in legal files resurfaced. Trainers pulled under, bit, struck, traumatized. Some lived, some didn't. Most never spoke, tied to confidentiality clauses, silenced by fear or guilt. But after Sam, silence no longer felt safe. Then something extraordinary happened. A bill was proposed, not just to increase marine park regulations, but to phase out orca captivity altogether within a generation. It wasn't perfect, but it was movement, a beginning. Sam's name was mentioned during the legislative session, his story read aloud in chambers where policy often moves slower than justice. Still, the impact was undeniable. Documentaries were produced. Schools changed field trip policies. Travel agencies dropped partnerships with marine parks. What had once been a family-friendly attraction was now under the microscope. Every dolphin jump, every trainer dive, every smiling performance shadowed by the image of Sam's final dive. And behind that image, Nakoa, no longer a spectacle, no longer a mascot, but a living creature, traumatized, intelligent, powerful, and broken. Animal behaviorists began to speak about the ethics of captivity with renewed urgency. Orcas, they reminded us, swim up to 100 miles a day in the wild. They live in complex social structures. They mourn their dead. They remember their families. And when you isolate them, when you cage them, when you force them to perform for fish, it changes something inside them. Maybe that's what happened to Nakoa. Maybe he remembered his pod. Maybe he never forgot the moment they took him away. Maybe he saw Sam not as a friend, but as another jailer, and hated himself for feeling affection toward him. Or maybe, as some believe, the attack wasn't rage at all, but panic. A sudden, violent outburst from a being pushed too far for too long. We'll never know exactly what triggered that moment, but we know what built up to it. Years of neglect, warnings ignored, red flags buried, a system that profits from silence until someone dies. That was Sam's story. But it doesn't have to be the next trainers or the next orcas, because what happened that day inside Ocean Dome was more than a tragedy. It was a mirror. It forced the world to look at itself, at what we call entertainment, at how we define respect for life, at the price we're willing to pay for a perfect photo, a magical show, a 5-minute thrill. And now, the question hangs in the air, heavy and haunting. How many more Sams will it take before we say, enough? They say time heals everything. But when it comes to the story of Sam Collins, time didn't heal. It revealed. It revealed the fractures in an industry built on fantasy. It revealed the truth buried beneath contracts, show lights, and curated smiles. And it revealed one of the darkest, most uncomfortable questions society has to face. How long have we turned our backs on the truth just to be entertained? Months passed since Sam's death. Ocean Dome Marine Park tried to move on. They rebranded, redesigned, and even launched a new interactive exhibit with virtual marine life experiences. They offered discounts to families, free tickets for school children, and photo ops with smiling mascots in orca costumes. But behind the bright colors and polished marketing, a shadow still loomed, the unanswered question of Nakoa and the lingering memory of a trainer who never came back from the pool. Public pressure only grew. Investigative journalists, no longer silenced, began digging deeper. They uncovered a disturbing timeline of neglect that spanned years, injuries that went unreported, trainers pressured to ignore protocols, animal behavior reports redacted or falsified. One article, published by a respected environmental watchdog, labeled Ocean Dome a ticking time bomb that finally exploded. And Sam? He became a face on T-shirts, a name on protest signs, a symbol for something much bigger than himself. His sister Megan refused to back down. She had once wanted nothing more than for the world to respect her brother's privacy. But after months of stonewalling, delays, and edited reports, she turned her grief into advocacy. She founded the Collins Initiative, a non-profit dedicated to exposing the dangers of marine mammal captivity and pushing for ethical sea sanctuaries around the world. Her first speech was delivered in front of over 10,000 protesters outside Ocean Dome's reopening ceremony. Holding a framed photo of Sam in his wetsuit smiling at Nakoa, she spoke, "My brother believed he was building a bridge, but no matter how gentle his heart, no matter how skilled his hands, a prison is still a prison, and no amount of love can undo the damage of captivity." Her words spread across the internet. Millions watched, commented, shared. And with that momentum came something else. Progress. Several major corporate sponsors pulled their support from Ocean Dome. A class action lawsuit was filed by former trainers. The marine park industry, once protected by glossy tourism and legal firewalls, suddenly found itself under siege, not from animal rights activists alone, but from former insiders who had stayed quiet for too long. One by one, their stories came out. A trainer from another park described being dragged by an orca in front of children, only to be told afterward to smile for the meet and greet. A veterinarian recalled falsifying health reports under orders. A junior trainer remembered being asked to delete footage after a near miss during rehearsals. These weren't isolated cases. They were a pattern, a system built not on respect for marine life, but on performance, profit, and denial. And at the center of it all was a truth that could no longer be ignored. Orcas don't belong in tanks. They never did. Meanwhile, the question of what to do with Nakoa became unavoidable. His behavior changed dramatically in the months after Sam's death. According to internal sources, he refused to eat for days. He swam in slow, repetitive circles. He made no vocalizations for weeks. It was as if the orca, who had once been the park's crown jewel, had become a ghost in his own glass cage. Animal behaviorists begged for his relocation to a sanctuary. Veterinarians argued he was deteriorating mentally and physically, but moving Nakoa wasn't simple. There were legal barriers, financial concerns, fear of setting a precedent, because if they admitted Nakoa needed a sanctuary, then maybe every orca in captivity did, and that terrified the industry. But public opinion didn't care about logistics anymore. It cared about justice. A documentary titled Echoes of the Tank, the story of Sam and Nakoa, was released on a major streaming platform. It featured unreleased footage, trainer testimonials, and scientific breakdowns of orca cognition and trauma. The final scene, a slow, heart-wrenching montage of Nakoa floating silently in his tank, ended with a simple, chilling caption. "He hasn't performed since. He hasn't seen another orca in 5 years. He hasn't left this pool in 17. The documentary exploded. It became a global talking point. Schools screened it. Universities held panels on marine ethics. Even major news anchors, once complicit in promoting these attractions, publicly acknowledged their role in perpetuating the myth. Ocean Dome's attendance dropped by 60%. Several other marine parks saw similar drops. The world had changed, and yet not everyone was ready to let go. There were still those who clung to the belief that captivity could be humane, that shows could be educational, that trainers like Sam proved humans and orcas could coexist in harmony. But Megan Collins offered a sobering reminder. "My brother didn't die in a moment of magic. He died in a moment of silence, the silence of ignored warnings, withheld truths, and systemic neglect. He died because we wanted a fairy tale more than we wanted the truth." Her words reached lawmakers. The Oceanic Protection Act, first proposed in the wake of Sam's death, finally passed. It banned orca breeding in captivity nationwide, phased out performance-based shows, and laid the groundwork for public funding of coastal sea sanctuaries. It wasn't everything, but it was something, and it was in Sam's name. So where is Nakoa now? After relentless pressure, Ocean Dome agreed quietly, with no press release, to retire Nakoa to a transitional sea pen off the coast of British Columbia, part of a newly constructed sanctuary project. It's not freedom, but it's space, it's salt water, it's sky. For the first time in decades, Nakoa felt the current of a real ocean. Experts say he was disoriented at first. He hesitated, floated near the gates for hours, but then he began to swim, slowly, cautiously, as if remembering what it meant to move without walls. No one knows how long Nakoa has left. Orcas in captivity live shorter lives than those in the wild. The trauma, the isolation, it leaves scars. But for once, he doesn't have to perform. He doesn't have to smile for crowds. He doesn't have to wear the mask of the entertainer. For once, he's just an orca. And Sam, he's not just a name anymore. He's a movement, a reason, a reminder that compassion is not enough if it's not backed by courage. Because Sam had compassion for animals, for people, for his dream of coexistence. But what he didn't have, what the system never gave him, was protection. The protection to speak up without fear. The protection to say this isn't safe and be heard. The protection to live past the applause. In the end, this story isn't about a killer whale. It's not even about a marine park. It's about a culture that chooses wonder over truth, profit over ethics, entertainment over life. But stories have power, and this one, Sam's, is changing everything. It's a wake-up call, a mirror, a question we all have to answer. Are we willing to change what we celebrate? Are we brave enough to stop looking at orcas as toys, trainers as props, and tanks as theaters? Or do we wait for another tragedy to shake us out of the illusion? Sam Collins didn't want to be a martyr. He wanted to build a bond. Instead, he built a legacy, and now it's ours to carry forward. For the trainers, for the whales, for every soul behind the glass, waiting for someone to say, "Enough."